February 15th, 2025 marks a day hand cyclist Brandon Lyons will likely never forget. Lyons chased and eclipsed a 15-year-old world record for the most miles ridden in a 24-hour period, riding an astonishing 414.7 miles. Welcome, Brandon.
How you doing, Bob? Thanks for having me.
Hey, Brandon, while I was sitting here, I was just tinkering around looking, wondering how many miles did an able-bodied guy ride? And, Google's a fantastic thing because I get an instantaneous answer. But Christoph Strasser of Austria in 2021 did 637.66 miles at an average speed of 25.56. Now, you had mentioned as we were just speaking that you actually could have come close to, making the podium for perhaps the third best cyclist period of all time at that distance.
Yeah, it's correct. And actually at that event, there was an individual, Matthew Left-Hand. He actually broke the course record there. He did 575 miles, I believe. But it was very, very close. Coming towards the end of the event, I was sitting in fourth place. So had I known that, I think my strategy might have changed to kind of finish the race itself. But all in all, had an unbelievable performance and was really happy with the event.
So before we get on to the event, I'm just looking at this. The old record was set by Germany's Thomas Lang, and it was 403.8 miles. So, when you were looking at that record, did you feel confident going into it that was an eclipsable record, or did it look insurmountable at any point?
Yeah, absolutely. Going into it, I knew that I had the engine and the fitness in order to do this. I think the way that I'm made up and a lot of my training suits me well for long ultra endurance type events. I had tried to accomplish this back in 2020 out at an event in Borrego Springs, California. So even at that time, I was very confident that I was able to break the 400 mile mark, as well as then try to break the record of 403.8. Unfortunately, did not accomplished that my first go around in California. Learned a lot from that event, came back, looked at what Thomas had done, looked at the events that Thomas had competed at, and saw that he competed at this event in Sebring, Florida, which was only a few hours away from me up in Jacksonville. So looking at it that way, I had determined it would have been best for me to try to accomplish it on the same exact course that he had done, giving me the best, opportunity in order to break the record.
Brandon, I know there had to be a lot of people involved in this. I know Chris Peterson of Carbon Bike was there. He was probably helping you swap out tires, keeping your equipment all top notch, dietitian. There's so many different aspects to being able to succeed at this. You're the guy on the bike, but you had to have a strong support group too.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you go to these ultra cycling events, they really break them up into two categories. There's a supported category as well as a non-supported category. I was in a supported category where I think a lot of the individuals who are trying to really get the best out of themselves, that gives you the best opportunity in order to do that. So as I crossed that finish line, it was not only me crossing that finish line, but the entire team behind me to get me there. Obviously, as you mentioned, Chris Peterson, as well as another guy named Steven Zurival. So the individuals at Top End, as well as Carbon Bike, were out there. Was just on a brand new bike, so thanks to them, was on a brand new frame for the past 2 months or so. And just the way that the equipment has come nowadays really gives you the best opportunity to go really fast for a really long time. So to have them out there was extremely motivating and supportive throughout the hard times throughout the night. That is definitely for sure.
Hey, and speaking of night, what I find pretty interesting is I know you and I both know Dave Bailey, who won Ironman, and I think you did RAM with him also. You went cross country with Dave, correct?
No, so I didn't do RAM with Dave. He did it with an individual, Greg Ward, I think was his name. Two of them got some bikes together who were previously in the motocross world together.
Gotcha.
I met David back in 2017, just on a bike trail. This was really shortly after I was injured. 2015, shortly after I was injured. I was out in California going through a rehab program, brought my hand cycle out there, was just kind of cruising around on a bike trail, met another guy, first time I'd ever seen someone in a hand cycle out on the roads, who was not myself. So came across David. He kind of took me under his wing and became not only a friend of mine, but really a mentor. He really gave me, gosh, I mean, a lot of the motivation, and he saw potential in myself that I didn't see as an athlete early on after my accident. So if it wasn't for David, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have been to the Paralympics or really competing with Team USA. That is definitely for sure.
So I remember talking to Dave about when he was getting ready for RAM, and he was mentioning that he would get up at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, just various times, knowing he would have to ride through the night. Did you ever, in your training and your preparation for this, did you get up at 2 in the morning and just go ride your bike just so you knew you could do it at 2 in the morning?
No, and I've done it before, and a lot of it was going back to the first time that I had done a 24-hour event back in Borrego Springs. I didn't have any issues with riding through the night. Never felt tired, never felt like I was, kind of losing focus or losing energy at all like that. My body was kind of just on that clock already. I think what has helped me is obviously traveling with Team USA. My body's kind of used to always being on different time zones and just having to perform. So that has definitely helped. I've started to adapt, whether it'll be riding early in the morning before work, sometimes 4:30, 5 a.m., or then training sometimes in the late afternoon. So trying to keep my body guessing and really being able to adapt that way. But a lot of it was learning from that first experience that I did, seeing what went well, and then where I could kind of make changes to go after this one. And looking over the last 4 years, again, I was really confident that I was going to be able to do it because of where my fitness was at that time to where it's gotten to over the past 4 years. I was extremely confident.
So as you reflect back over that 22 and a half hour period, tell me about what some of the most difficult moments were. I mean, you get going, everything is feeling really good. 5 hours in, you're riding away, but somewhere, I have to believe that somewhere 15, 16, 18 hours, you got to start to wear down. So where were some of the tough moments, and can you even isolate some of those?
Absolutely. And there were 2 times that I'll never forget. As you mentioned, so this race was slightly different than the first race that I did in Borrego Springs in being at the time that you started the event. So in California, you started at 5 p.m. and then you went until 5 p.m. the following day. So you kind of got through the evening in really early on. And then when you kind of came back around that sunset, your body clock was kind of on it. So you got through that more challenging time there. This one started at 7 a.m. on Saturday and it went 7 a.m. to Sunday. So you hit that evening later on in the day after you've been through, 14 or so hours already on the bike. For me, as you mentioned, those first 5 hours, a lot of my training on the weekends were doing 5-6 hour days and harder than, zone 2, just kind of like a really fast time. And I would always be improving that 5-6 hour time frame. So I knew I was going to be successful at that time and be able to keep going. We started at 7 a.m. and it was so fast because there wasn't a lot of wind going on at that time. The sun wasn't up yet. So it was perfect conditions. Cool morning, no wind, on a very flat course. So it was an opportunity to really get a lot of miles in at a short period of time. And that was really my strategy. So I really tried to knock that out. But the most difficult time came right around that 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock time frame up until 4:30 or so, because it was a extremely hot day that we have not had over the past 2 months in Florida as we've been going through winter, where temperatures got almost into the 90s. It was in the upper 80s with sun and wind that I picked up. So for the next, 5 or 6 hours or so, that were some of the most hardest conditions of the entire day, just because of the heat as well as the wind that picked up. So that's where it was more, I would say, mentally exhausting than anything, because you're going around a 3.6 mile loop repetitively, and you're hitting same times where the wind is hitting you at this direction, right at this time every single time. And then just that sun baking on us, especially from a hand cyclist position of being so close to the blacktop, that heat just radiates right onto the body. So a lot of it was just changing as the fly and just implementing those cooling strategies. So had ice socks and had water that was being hosed down every single lap coming around. So that was definitely the most challenging time of the entire event in my eyes.
So a few stats that I came across: 113 laps, more or less, on that 3.5 mile loop that you were referring to. Now, Peterson also told me that the course was quite nice. He said it wasn't closed off, but it was very controlled. The pavement was really good, which is obviously critical. You don't need to be running through potholes and chattery pavement. So you had that. You ran an average of 19.2 miles per hour, and you were in the saddle riding for 21 and a half hours. Now, this I found really interesting, which kind of indicates to me that I know you're an analytical guy by your education, so you obviously examine this a little bit deeper than most would. You basically consumed 8,090 calories or consumed 8,166 calories, one of the two, and you burned just about the same. So I think it was 8,090 consumed and 8,166 burned. Was this wasn't by accident, was it?
No. Everything I did was kind of to the T. And again, learning from what I did in the past. One of the things that was really great for me is that I had a great nutrition strategy 4 years ago. Didn't have any upset stomach, didn't have any issues with energy. And as you mentioned, Christoph Strauser, he was in Borrego Springs at the event that I did 4 years ago. And there was a coworker of mine named Mark Gibson, who had done Race Across America, has done all these ultra cycling events. And he was one that really got me into this world. And I just learned a lot from him, what worked well from him from a nutrition strategy, him being an analytical guy just as myself, that we had every single lap kind of teed down every hour to understand how many calories I was going to burn, how many I was going to consume, what did those calories look like that I was consuming, to make sure it was from, drink mix, bars, chews, goos, everything, so you weren't getting fatigued of eating, but making sure you're getting the right calories that were going to be absorbed, as well as honestly having all of my liquids dialed in. That was one of the biggest things I was looking for from just an overall electrolyte consumption.
Hey, no doubt about it. I mean, obviously, no matter how many calories you're burning, while you're out there riding, you can't sit in your bike and eat a steak. So what were you consuming? It was mostly a combination of, I don't want to say sugars, but I know gels, drinks, electrolytes. It is a lot of very fast-burning carbohydrate-y food.
Yeah, from a high-level view, it is almost all sugar. So a majority of it was coming from liquid, just to make sure that I was still pushing water. So I was trying to get a lot of my calories from drink mix to force myself to drink. The only things that I actually ate from a solid food perspective was a peanut butter and Nutella sandwich twice throughout the day. But a majority of it was, I want to come in at my pit stop, I'm going to change out a water bladder. I already had a baggie full of all of my food that was going to cover me for the next 5 hours, grab that and go. So it wasn't really sitting around in the pit stop at all, eating, kind of resting, do any of that. It was trying to stay on the bike, moving as much as I possibly can.
So I know this from having ridden long miles. People think, oh man, you're going to jump off that bike after 22 hours and you're going to go right over to In-N-Out Burger and start throwing down doubles. But it doesn't work like that. Your body is a little shut down. So how long did it take before you could really get into a point where you could go back to consuming proteins and more normal foods?
Yeah. We actually had an award ceremony that morning, shortly after at 8 a.m. at like a little country club resort that was being held. And they had a breakfast. And it was like the last thing that I wanted to do was actually eat real food. I still had those 8,000 calories of such goo just sitting at the bottom of my stomach. The last thing I wanted to actually eat was real food. It did take a good, 12 hours. I'm not going to lie. I did have a nice dinner that evening, but the entire day up until that time, I did not want to eat at all. I was not hungry. Was just not in the appetite to really stomach anything like that.
No, I completely get it. Your body is in some kind of an overdrive that needs to be compensated for. Hey, Brandon, one last thing. I noticed that you do have a Paralympics under your belt, which is really pretty unbelievable considering the short period of time you've been using a chair. But you went to the games in Paris in 2024. You came away with a 7th and a 10th. I think that was time trial and the road race. I mean, which was really actually quite fantastic. What was your experience like in Paris?
Yeah, the experience was amazing. I've been trying to go to the games now. This was my second games trying to make it. Unfortunately, missed out in Tokyo in 2020 or 2021, and then came back for another 3 years, and then finally made it to Paris. It had its ups and downs, that is for sure. I mean, looking at it from a big picture standpoint, it was an amazing experience to be able to be out there. And again, I take everything as kind of a learning experience and hope that I have a chance to make it back here again in 2028 in LA. But unfortunately, while I was out at Paris, came down with a bone infection in my foot.
Oh boy.
Which was right before I was going to compete. So didn't know what was going on for the first 4 days that we were leading up to competition. I woke up I was tired. My spasticity was going crazy, and just knew that something was off. And then my performance on the bike, even through training, was very low. So I knew that something was wrong, but I just couldn't pinpoint exactly what was going on. And unfortunately, after the time trial event, I went to the hospital, which right in the Paralympic Village, and saw that I had osteomyelitis in my foot from an open wound that had unfortunately got to the bone. So tried to deal with that. Still was able to compete. Unfortunately, not to my best abilities. I really thought I had a great opportunity to medal out there, particularly in the time trial event. So again, taking it as an opportunity to try to learn, see what I could have done differently, and try to make it back to 2028 as kind of a redemption story here.
Man, you're a young guy. There's no doubt in my mind that you got a good games in front of you. 414 miles, 414.7 to be exact, in 24 hours. Fantastic record. Great job. Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks so much.